An unexpected meeting. Nora Bennett wiped the flour from her cheek as she surveyed the three-tiered practice cake sitting on the prep table. The rehearsal dinner was in 2 hours, and her sister Vivian had specifically requested that Nora create something special for the evening. Being a pastry chef had its perks, but being the sister of a bride came with expectations that sometimes felt overwhelming. The estate kitchen was enormous, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. Vivian had chosen the Rosewood Manor for her wedding venue, a decision that had raised Nora's eyebrows when she'd first heard the price tag. Her sister had always dreamed big, while Nora was content with her small bakery in the Arts District, creating custom cakes for locals who appreciated her attention to detail. She was adjusting the sugar flowers on the top tier when she heard footsteps behind her. Without turning, she called out, "If you're here to sample, the answer is no. Vivian will kill me if there's even a fingerprint on this cake before tonight." A deep, amused voice responded, "I wasn't planning to steal any cake, though it looks incredible. I was actually looking for the rehearsal happening somewhere in this maze of a building." Nora turned to find a man standing in the doorway, tall and lean with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead. He wore dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing tan forearms. His eyes were a striking shade of blue, almost startling in their intensity. "The rehearsal is in the garden pavilion," Nora said, gesturing vaguely toward the eastern wing. "Through the main hall, past the conservatory. Take the third door on your left." He smiled, and something in Nora's chest tightened unexpectedly. "That sounds like directions to Narnia. Any chance you could show me? I'm already late, and I have a feeling wandering aimlessly won't improve my standing with the bride." Nora glanced at her cake, then at the clock. She had 15 minutes before the caterers would arrive to collect it. "All right, but we need to move quickly. I'm Nora, by the way. Maid of honor and apparently tour guide. Dominic," he offered, falling into step beside her as they left the kitchen. Best man and geographically challenged guest. As they walked through the manor's elegant hallways, Nora found herself hyper-aware of his presence. He moved with a casual confidence that suggested he was comfortable in expensive settings. Yet there was nothing pretentious about him. "So how do you know the groom?" Nora asked, making conversation as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. "Trevor and I went to university together," Dominic replied. "We were roommates for 3 years. Some of the best and worst decisions of my life happened in that tiny dorm room." Nora laughed. "That sounds ominous. Should Vivian be worried?" "Nothing too scandalous. Mostly late-night philosophy debates and questionable cooking experiments. Trevor once tried to make risotto in a coffee maker. It ended about as well as you'd expect." They arrived at the garden pavilion just as Vivian was organizing the wedding party into their positions. Her sister shot Nora a questioning look when she saw her arrive with the best man. But there was no time for explanations as the wedding coordinator began directing everyone. Nora took her place at the front, hyper-conscious that Dominic was standing just across from her on the groom's side. Throughout the rehearsal, she caught him watching her several times, a slight smile playing at his lips whenever their eyes met. Chemistry in the kitchen after the rehearsal. The dinner was held on the manor's terrace, overlooking the manicured gardens. String lights had been woven through the pergola overhead, creating a canopy of soft golden light. Nora found herself seated across from Dominic, with several of Trevor's college friends filling the seats between them. The conversation flowed easily. Stories about Trevor's questionable fashion choices in college and Vivian's notorious perfectionism. Nora contributed her share of embarrassing sister stories, including the time 12-year-old Vivian had organized a neighborhood talent show and charged admission. "She made $300, Nora said, shaking her head, "and then invested it in a lemonade stand business. Even as a kid, she was destined to marry someone in finance. Trevor's lucky to have found someone who matches his ambition," Dominic said. and there was something in his tone that made Nora think he was speaking from personal experience. As the dinner progressed, Nora excused herself to check on the dessert presentation. The cake had been transported successfully to the dessert table, but she wanted to make sure the lighting showcased it properly. She was adjusting one of the spotlights when Dominic appeared beside her again. "You made this?" he asked, studying the cake with genuine interest. "It's remarkable. The detail work on these flowers is extraordinary." "Thank you," Nora said, pleased by his attention to the craftsmanship. "Each flower is made from pulled sugar. It takes hours, but I love the way they catch the light." Dominic leaned closer, examining a delicate rose. "My mother was a sculptor. She used to say that the best art was the kind that served a purpose beyond beauty, something that could be shared and experienced, not just observed." "Was?" Nora asked softly. "She passed away 6 years ago," Dominic said, his voice even but tinged with old grief. "Cancer. She was working on a piece for a children's hospital when she got too sick to continue. I finished it for her, though I'm nowhere near the artist she was." Without thinking, Nora reached out and touched his arm gently. "I'm sure she would have been proud that you completed it." He covered her hand with his own for a brief moment, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Thank you for saying that." The moment stretched between them, charged with an awareness that felt both exciting and slightly terrifying. Nora pulled her hand back, suddenly conscious of the boundaries she was probably crossing. This was her sister's wedding weekend, and Dominic was clearly someone important to the groom. Getting involved in anything complicated would be spectacularly poor timing. "We should get back," she said, perhaps more abruptly than necessary. "They'll be cutting the cake soon." Midnight conversations rehearsal dinner wound down around 11, with guests gradually drifting back to their rooms or heading home. Nora stayed behind to supervise the cake service and ensure all her supplies were packed away properly. By midnight, the terrace was empty except for the cleanup crew and a few lingering candles. She was carrying the last box to her car when she found Dominic sitting on one of the stone benches overlooking the garden, his jacket discarded beside him and his tie loosened. "Couldn't sleep?" Nora asked, setting down her box. "Didn't try," he admitted. "I'm terrible at sleeping in unfamiliar places. Hotels, guest rooms, anywhere that isn't home. My mind just keeps running." Nora understood that feeling. She'd spent plenty of nights lying awake in her apartment above the bakery, mentally reviewing recipes or worrying about upcoming orders. "What keeps your mind running?" Dominic was quiet for a moment, then said, "Honestly, tonight, you. I can't figure you out." Nora sat down on the bench, leaving a respectful distance between them. "What's there to figure out?" "I'm pretty straightforward. Pastry chef, maid of honor, perpetually covered in flour. You're talented enough to work anywhere," Dominic said, turning to face her. "I've eaten desserts at Michelin-starred restaurants that weren't as impressive as that cake. But you run a small neighborhood bakery instead of pursuing something more ambitious. Why?" The question wasn't judgmental, just genuinely curious. Nora considered her answer carefully. "Because ambitious isn't always about scale. My bakery serves the community. I make birthday cakes for kids who've been coming since they were toddlers. I create wedding cakes for couples I've known for years. Every order has a story, a connection. Working in some prestigious kitchen would mean beautiful food for strangers. I prefer meaning over prestige." Dominic studied her face in the candlelight. "That's remarkable. Most people spend their lives chasing recognition." "What about you?" Nora asked. "Trevor mentioned you're in business, but he was vague about the details." A flicker of something crossed Dominic's face. Hesitation maybe. "I run an investment firm. We specialize in tech startups and sustainable energy projects. It's demanding work, lots of travel and high-stakes decisions. Do you love it?" The question came out before Nora could stop herself. Dominic's laugh was short and slightly bitter. "That's complicated. I'm good at it. It challenges me, but love. I'm not sure I've loved anything in a long time. The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. Nora felt the urge to reach out again, but kept her hands in her lap. Maybe you just need to find something worth loving, she said quietly. Dominic's eyes locked with hers. Maybe I just did. The words sent a shiver down Nora's spine. This was dangerous territory. This instant connection with someone she barely knew. But sitting there under the stars, with the scent of night-blooming jasmine surrounding them, Nora couldn't bring herself to leave. They talked until almost 2 in the morning, sharing stories about their families, their dreams, their fears. Dominic told her about growing up with parents who expected perfection, about building his business from nothing despite their doubts. Nora shared her journey from culinary school dropout to successful small business owner, the struggles and small victories that had shaped her path. When they finally said goodnight, Dominic's hand lingered on hers for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. And it sounded like a promise. Nora drove home with her heart racing, already wondering what tomorrow would bring. Morning preparations. Morning of Vivian's wedding arrived with brilliant sunshine and the sense of controlled chaos that Nora had come to expect from her perfectionist sister. By 8 in the morning, the bridal suite at Rosewood Manor was already filled with bridesmaids, a makeup artist, a hairstylist, and enough champagne to stock a small bar. Nora had been awake since 5, putting the finishing touches on the actual wedding cake. This one was even more elaborate than the rehearsal dinner cake, a 5-tiered masterpiece covered in hand-painted fondant depicting scenes from Vivian and Trevor's relationship. She'd spent 3 weeks planning it and 2 full days executing it. "Stop fussing with your phone and drink your mimosa," Vivian commanded from her position in the makeup chair. "You've checked on that cake 6 times already. It's perfect, just like everything you make." Nora tucked her phone away and accepted the champagne flute from one of the bridesmaids. "I just want everything to be exactly right for you." "It will be," Vivian said, catching Nora's eye in the mirror. "Now, are we going to talk about you disappearing with the best man last night? Because Claire saw you 2 on the terrace at midnight, and she has theories." Heat rushed to Nora's cheeks. "We were just talking. He couldn't sleep, and I was packing up supplies for 2 hours. Vivian raised an eyebrow, a gesture that reminded Nora of their mother. "Come on. I saw the way he looked at you during rehearsal, and the way you kept pretending not to notice." Before Nora could deflect, her sister's phone buzzed with a message. Vivian glanced at it and smiled. "Trevor says Dominic has been asking questions about you all morning. Subtle ones, but still. He wanted to know if you were seeing anyone." Nora's heart did an unexpected flip. What did Trevor tell him? The truth, that you've been single for over a year, ever since that disaster with the food critic who thought he was too sophisticated for your neighborhood bakery. Vivian's expression softened. "Nora, I know you're cautious after Julian, but Dominic seems different. He's successful, yes, but Trevor says he's also genuine. Maybe give him a chance." The wedding ceremony took place in the manor's rose garden at exactly 2 in the afternoon. Nora stood at the altar holding Vivian's bouquet, watching her sister marry the love of her life. It was beautiful and emotional, and Nora found tears slipping down her cheeks as they exchanged vows. Throughout the ceremony, she was acutely aware of Dominic standing on Trevor's side. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. Every time she glanced in his direction, she found him already watching her, his blue eyes warm with something that made her pulse quicken. After the ceremony, during the cocktail hour, Nora was pulled in a dozen directions, handling maid of honor duties. She made sure Vivian stayed hydrated, corralled family members for photos, and checked that the reception timeline was on schedule. Through it all, she kept catching glimpses of Dominic circulating among the guests, charming Trevor's business associates and making Vivian's grandmother laugh. A dance and a revelations reception began with all the traditional elements, including toasts, cake cutting, and the first dance. Nora had given her maid of honor speech earlier, managing to make both Vivian and half the room cry with stories of their childhood and sisterly bond. As the band began playing and more couples joined the dance floor, Nora finally allowed herself to relax slightly. She was standing near the bar, watching the celebration unfold, when Dominic appeared at her elbow. "You've been working all day," he said, offering her a glass of champagne. "I've watched you solve at least 15 minor crises, prevent potential disasters with elderly relatives, and somehow keep smiling through it all. That's what maids of honor do," Nora said, accepting the drink gratefully. "Though I'll admit I'm looking forward to being a regular guest at the next wedding. Dance with me." Dominic extended his hand. "Before you get pulled away for another emergency." The band was playing something slow and jazzy as Dominic led her onto the dance floor. His hand settled at her waist, warm and steady, while his other hand clasped hers. They moved together easily, as if they'd done this 100 times before. "I meant what I said last night," Dominic murmured, close enough that only she could hear. "About finding something worth loving." Nora looked up at him, her breath catching. "Dominic, we barely know each other. Sometimes knowing takes years. Sometimes it takes a single conversation under the stars." His thumb traced small circles on her waist. "I'm in town for the next month. Let me take you to dinner. Let me get to know you properly." Before Nora could answer, Trevor and Vivian danced past them. Trevor caught Dominic's eye and grinned knowingly, while Vivian gave Nora an encouraging thumbs up. Subtle as ever, her sister. "One dinner," Nora heard herself say. "But somewhere normal. No 5-star restaurants or fancy clubs. I want to see who you really are, not the business mogul version." Dominic's smile was brilliant. "Deal. How about Tuesday?" You pick the place. They danced through 3 more songs, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Nora learned that Dominic had a weakness for terrible action movies, that he'd backpacked through Southeast Asia in college, that he still called his father every Sunday despite their complicated relationship. As the evening progressed and the celebration grew more lively, Dominic eventually excused himself to fulfill best man duties with a toast. Nora watched him speak eloquently about Trevor's loyalty and Vivian's spirited determination, his words bringing both laughter and tears to the room. Under the stars again later, as the party began winding down, Nora slipped outside for some air. The terrace was quieter now, with most guests either on the dance floor or heading home. She found a secluded bench near the fountain and sat down, removing her heels with a grateful sigh. "We have to stop meeting like this." Dominic's voice came from behind her. "People will start to think we're avoiding the party." Nora smiled as he sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Just needed a moment. It's been a long day. A beautiful day, though," Dominic said. "Your sister looked happy." "She did." Nora leaned back, looking up at the stars. "I'm glad she found Trevor. They balance each other well." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Dominic spoke again, his voice serious. "Nora, there's something I should tell you before Tuesday. Something about my work that I wasn't entirely forthcoming about last night." Nora's stomach tightened. Here it came, whatever complication she'd been half expecting. "Okay. My investment firm is Vale Capital. We manage about 15 billion in assets across multiple portfolios. I'm not just comfortable financially, I'm extraordinarily wealthy." He said it matter-of-factly, without pride or apology. "I didn't mention it last night because I wanted you to know me first, not my bank account. But I won't hide it either." Nora processed this information. Vale Capital. She'd heard the name before, seen it in business news. Dominic wasn't just successful, he was powerful, influential, the kind of person who moved in circles far removed from her neighborhood bakery Why tell me now? She asked quietly. Because I don't want there to be secrets between us, and because I need you to know that if you decide this is too much, that our worlds are too different, I'll understand. His hand found hers. But I hope you won't. I hope you'll give me a chance to prove that the money doesn't define who I am. Nora thought about her ex, Julian, the food critic who'd looked down on her simple bakery, who'd wanted her to be more ambitious, more sophisticated. She thought about the assumptions people made about wealth and status. Then she thought about the man sitting beside her, who'd listened to her talk about sugar flowers for 20 minutes, who'd been vulnerable about his grief, who looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the room. I grew up in a 3-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaner, Nora said. My dad was a postal worker, my mom was a nurse. We never had much money, but we had enough. I learned early that wealth doesn't guarantee happiness, or kindness, or integrity. She turned to face him. So yes, your money is intimidating. But it's not a deal breaker. What would be a deal breaker is, if you're not genuine. If this interest in me is some passing fancy, because I'm different from the women in your usual circles. It's not, Dominic said firmly. I've dated plenty of women, Nora, models, executives, socialites. None of them made me feel the way you do. None of them made me want to be honest about who I am beneath all the success. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I want to know everything about you, your favorite books, what you dream about, why you chose pastry over savory cooking. I want to hear about your worst day and your best memory. I want to earn the right to be part of your life. The sincerity in his voice undid something in Nora's chest. She leaned forward and kissed him softly, a brief connection that felt like sealing a promise. When she pulled back, Dominic's eyes were dark with emotion. Tuesday, she whispered. There's a little Italian place 3 blocks from my bakery, Mama Rosa's, best carbonara in the city, cash only, red checkered tablecloths. That's where I want our first real date. Dominic smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Perfect. Tuesday evening Nora changed her outfit 3 times before, settling on dark jeans, a soft cream sweater, and her favorite leather jacket. She'd spent the day at the bakery trying to focus on orders, but her mind kept drifting to the evening ahead. Finally, at 6:30, she locked up and walked the 3 blocks to Mama Rosa's. Dominic was already waiting outside, looking completely out of place and somehow perfect in expensive jeans and a navy sweater. When he saw her, his entire face lit up. I was 15 minutes early, he admitted. I've been standing here trying not to look too eager. Nora laughed, some of her nervousness dissipating. Come on, let's get you some real food. Mama Rosa's was exactly as Nora had described, small, cozy, with red checkered tablecloths, and the amazing smell of garlic and tomatoes permeating everything. Rosa herself, a 70-year-old Italian woman who'd been running the restaurant for 40 years, took one look at Dominic and winked at Nora. Finally, you bring a handsome man, Rosa said in her thick accent. I was worried you marry your oven. Rosa, Nora protested, blushing furiously, but Dominic just laughed and charmed Rosa completely, complimenting her restaurant and asking about her recipes in fluent Italian. By the time they sat down, Rosa had already decided Dominic was acceptable and brought them a bottle of wine on the house for Belle and Nora's boyfriend. You speak Italian, Nora said as they settled into their corner booth. My mother was half Italian. She insisted I learn the language. Dominic poured them each some wine. It's one of the few things I'm grateful my parents pushed me on. Over carbonara and wine. They talked more openly than they had at the wedding. Dominic told her about the pressure of inheriting his father's business expectations, about building Vale Capital from a small investment fund into what it became, about the loneliness that came with that level of success. Everyone wants something, he said quietly. business deals, investments, introductions, donations. It's exhausting never knowing if people like you for yourself or for what you can do for them. Is that why you didn't tell me right away? Nora asked. He nodded. I wanted one person who saw me first. Just me. Nora reached across the table and took his hand. I do see you. The you who makes terrible jokes, who quotes his mother, who gets lost in manor houses. That's who I'm interested in. The next month their relationship developed quickly over the following weeks. Dominic was true to his word about being in town for the month, and they saw each other almost daily. He came to her bakery early in the mornings, learning to appreciate the artistry of pastry work. She accompanied him to a gallery opening and a charity gala, discovering that she could navigate his world better than she'd expected. They had picnics in the park, cooked dinner in her tiny apartment kitchen, and spent hours talking about everything from philosophy to their favorite childhood memories. Dominic met her friends, fitting into her casual social circle with surprising ease. Nora met his business associates and learned to hold her own in conversations about markets and investments. But there were challenges too. Dominic's month in town was an exception, not the rule. His work required constant travel, and Nora's bakery demanded her daily presence. They were building something real, but the logistics of maintaining it seemed increasingly complicated. 3 weeks into their relationship, Dominic took Nora to his penthouse for the first time. The space was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern design, but it felt empty somehow, like a showroom rather than a home. It's beautiful, Nora said, walking to the windows overlooking the city. It's sterile, Dominic corrected, coming to stand behind her. I've never been able to make it feel like home. I'm never here long enough. Nora turned to face him. Dominic, we need to talk about what happens when your month ends. You'll go back to traveling constantly, and I'll be here running my bakery. How do we make this work? I've been thinking about that. He took her hands. What if I restructured things, brought in a partner to handle the travel-heavy aspects, focused more on local investments and strategy? I could be based here permanently. You can't reorganize your entire life for a relationship that's only a few weeks old, Nora protested. Why not? Dominic's intensity was back. That focused attention that made her feel like the center of his universe. I've spent 15 years building a career I'm proud of, but that leaves me isolated and exhausted. Meeting you showed me what I've been missing. A connection, a home, a reason to be somewhere instead of constantly moving. What if it doesn't work out? Nora asked softly. What if we realize we're too different? Then at least I'll have tried to build a life worth living instead of just a successful company. He cupped her face gently. Nora, I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've already fallen. I want to find out what we could be together. And I can't do that from hotel rooms around the world. Tears pricked Nora's eyes. I'm falling for you too. But I need you to be sure about this. I need to know you're changing things because you want to, not just because of me. It's both, Dominic said honestly. I want to change my life, and I want that life to include you. Those aren't separate things anymore. 6 months later, Dominic did restructure Vale Capital, bringing in a managing partner and focusing his energy on sustainable local investments. He became a regular fixture in Nora's neighborhood, known at the coffee shop where he worked mornings, and at the park where he ran every evening. For her part, Nora expanded her bakery slightly, hiring an assistant so she could occasionally travel with Dominic when business required it. They found their rhythm, balancing her early mornings with his late nights, her creativity with his analytical mind. They moved in together into a renovated loft that felt like a perfect blend of both their styles. Nora's warm, cozy touches mixed with Dominic's clean, modern aesthetic. The kitchen became Nora's domain, where she experimented with new recipes, while Dominic worked at the breakfast bar, occasionally stealing bites of whatever she was testing. One evening, nearly 8 months after the wedding where they'd met, Dominic came home to find Nora in the kitchen working on an elaborate cake. "What's this for?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Vivian and Trevor's first anniversary party next month," Nora said, leaning back against him. "She wants something even more elaborate than her wedding cake. My sister never does anything halfway." Dominic was quiet for a moment, then said, "Speaking of weddings and anniversaries, I have something for you." He stepped back and pulled a small box from his pocket. Nora's heart began racing as he opened it to reveal a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. "It was my grandmother's," Dominic said. "She left it to me before she died. Told me to give it to someone who made me want to build a home instead of an empire." He took Nora's hand. "You taught me that life isn't about constant achievement and growth. It's about connection, about creating something meaningful with someone you love. Marry me, Nora. Let me spend the rest of my life learning new things from you." Nora's vision blurred with tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply, tasting of promise and forever. When they finally broke apart, Nora laughed through her tears. "You know my sister is going to claim credit for this," she said. "She say she knew from the moment she saw us at the rehearsal dinner." "Let her." Dominic grinned. "She be right. I did know, even then. I just needed time to catch up to what my heart already understood." 1 year later, their wedding was small and intimate, held at the same rose garden where Vivian and Trevor had married. Nora wore a simple lace dress and carried a bouquet of sugar flowers she'd made herself. Dominic cried during his vows, telling everyone who would listen that he was the luckiest man alive. They honeymooned in Italy, spending 2 weeks eating incredible food and touring Dominic's mother's hometown. When they returned, they threw themselves into a new project, a foundation that provided grants to small business owners in underserved communities, helping people like Nora build their dreams. Dominic scaled back his work even further, finding satisfaction in mentoring young entrepreneurs rather than managing billion-dollar portfolios. Nora's bakery thrived, becoming a neighborhood institution known for both incredible pastries and the love story of its owner. On their first anniversary, they returned to Rosewood Manor for Vivian and Trevor's party. As they danced in the same garden where they'd first really talked, Nora rested her head against Dominic's chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up the constant travel, the intensity of running everything yourself?" Dominic tilted her chin up to look at him. "Not for a single second. I traded a life of achievement for a life of meaning. I have you. I have work I'm passionate about. I have a home that actually feels like home. That's not a sacrifice. That's winning." Nora kissed him softly, tasting champagne and happiness. Around them, the party continued, but in that moment, they were alone in their own world. To people who'd found each other at a wedding and built something extraordinary from a chance meeting and midnight conversations. The Billionaire and the Baker, proving that the best love stories aren't about grand gestures or different worlds colliding. They're about two people choosing each other every single day, building a life that's rich in all the ways that matter. And they lived, loved, and created beautiful things together for all the days that followed.